Hello my dudes. So, all the rest of the cards have been revealed, the new cards, and I'm just gonna go down the line on Gwent. They posted all the cards from the live stream, and I'll just talk about them for a bit. There weren't any especially interesting cards revealed, so I think I'll go through this fairly fast. First we've got Mahakam Ale. It's essentially just a full moon potion with potentially an easier or harder requirement to fill. So, because a lot of potions actually synergize with token minions, or musters, that means that you're usually playing into one row. If you look at PFI, if you look at the new peasant leader or whatever his name is now, Witchers, Crones, Kalano Harpy, etc. They're usually into one row, and that means that you generally have to play 3 minions before you could play this card. Though, because it's alchemy, there are some musters for it. For example, Vicavaro Novice can get it. It's a 14-point play, not bad. If you're, say, playing Reveal, you can play Morvan into mid row, or back row, reveal enemy cards, get your Impera Golems out, and then you finish it off by playing Vicavaro Novice for 14. It's not great. It's okay. Just kind of a filler card. If you're looking for some extra power, and the bronzes you're looking at aren't really good, and you can fill this requirement fairly easily. Another card that can do it is like Warmonger into discarding Raider, because it fills up two rows immediately, but I don't think you have any alchemy synergy in Skellige. Next we've seen Mandrake. We haven't seen Expired Ale. So Expired Ale is extremely interesting and very complex, but I don't think it's a good card. So the only way this card could see play is through the use with Vesemir plus Roach. If you win the coin flip and you can out-tempo with Vesemir plus Roach into this card, you will most likely gain card advantage, because at worst you're winning on even. Because he played the card, you play the card. They gain their card back, but this isn't really gaining a card back. So if they if they insta pass and then they discard the card, or they can mulligan the card away, then all you've essentially done is won the round down a card, right? Though that does mean you immediately win the round. If they continue playing for 2 rounds, then you're going to actually gain that card advantage back, because say you both start at 10 cards, he plays a card, you play a card, you're both at 9. He gains 1 because you played your Vesemir, so he's at 10. He plays a card, he's at 9, you play a card, you're at 8. At which point, I think he has 1 more chance to do it. So okay, he plays a card, he's at 8, you play a card, you're at 7. This triggers. And because he didn't play this card. Let's say he wanted to discard the card. Bam! Now he goes from 9 cards, or like 8 cards that he had previously. He loses this card, down to 7. He loses another card, down to 6. And you're at 7 cards currently. So if he plays another card, he's down to 5. So 2 card advantage. Or if he passes, and you only need to use 1 card to actually out-tempo him, then you're winning uneven. So if you dry pass the next round and he has no carryover, you again gain a card advantage. Or you bleed him or whatever. So it's kind of good, but I think the situation where it is actually good is fairly low. If Bran is still going to be popular, I think they might just dry pass since they have carryover anyways, and they're going to accept just putting this card back into their deck and, every turn just mulliganing it away, because it's a 0-point card essentially, or it's a negative point card, right, if you have it in your hand. But they're gaining a card. If they pass and they mulligan it away, they're gaining back a card, so you're giving them a card. Because when they mulligan it, they actually get the card for it, right? So this is going to be interesting. I think It might see some experimentation, especially early on. I don't think it's an actual competitive card, though. I think it's very good versus worse players, whereas not quite as good versus good players, because they can prep for it, especially if this card becomes meta, kind of. Or like it becomes known which decks run it, because not every deck will be able to fit this combo in, because that requires 2 silver slots and a gold. I think people can just play around it. You just play higher tempo for the first few rounds, and the meta will adjust to that. You have to play like more than 10 points first round and keep that tempo up. Or set up carryover before you can actually lower that tempo. Either way, I don't think this card sees plays. I don't think it's good enough. Hen Marvin's Blue Dream. We haven't seen this yet. It's deploy, spawn a copy of a gold card from an opponent's graveyard, and if it's a unit, but not an agent or a double agent, boosted by 2. So it's kind of like Old Reveal, or the second part of Old, not Reveal, Renew. It's like the second part of Old Renew. I think this card's kind of bad. It'll only work if we had some disloyal golds. The only one currently that isn't doomed is DJ. DJ is good because you can set up your deck. DJ is good because you can tint to 0, Neneke back cards, and then DJ, and you always guarantee what you get from DJ like that. If you can't do that twice, really, right? You can't play DJ in round 2 with 2 cards left in your deck and you know exactly what they are, and then Neneke back cards, and then also use this in round 3. It kind of doesn't work. It means you'd have to use DJ at the beginning before you've tinned everything, and you would be using DJ to actually tin as well, which you could do depending on what type of deck you build. If you're just building a machine synergy type of deck, this could work. But if DJ pulls this card, then yeah. Playing random opponent's golds is not worth it, even with the +2, because generally decks don't use general good golds, they use synergistic golds. So for example, you wouldn't exactly want Menno in your deck, because you don't have, or like, you wouldn't want to play Menno randomly during the course of the game. You might not be running, for example, if you're playing Anar, you might not be running Thaler and you don't have Infiltrators. So Menno becomes a 12-point gold. With this, it's a 14-point gold. It's not good. It's not good. I think outside of just kind of memeing with this, or for the remote possibility of like DJ, double DJ, I just don't think this sees play. I think it's too bad. It's alchemy, but it's a gold, so I don't think it's anything special. It is like special, so, you know, Spellitel, but no, not good enough. Muzzle we've talked about, Wolfstein we've talked about. Avalok the Sage, same as Blue Dream, not worth it. Bad card. Not only does it spawn a random copy, or a random different gold, it could also be a silver unit. So your gold is going to be a random silver unit from their deck, or gold, +2. It's very bad. Imagine somebody runs Roach, he hasn't played a gold yet, you play Avalok the Sage, you get Roach. Ooh, 6-point gold. It's a bad card. The same problem as Blue Dream. You're not playing your own synergistic golds, you're playing random golds that might not have any synergy with your deck. In which case you'd be playing, you know, Menno for 14. Or you could be playing Leo with like a 6 maximum power card in your hand. Lugos. I mean, Lugos is okay, but if you don't want to discard a card in your deck, doesn't see play, it's a meme. Though I will say, Gaunter into Avalok the Sage into Gaunter is a pretty good meme. Ale of the Ancestors is interesting. So this is something they introduced in this patch, the boon system. So boons are essentially, oh wait, let me switch the camera. The boon system is essentially a reverse of hazards, or a reverse of, is the reverse of hazards or like weather. So it's positive effects in a row. So you're playing this for 4 power, 6 armor, and at every turn at the start of your turn. So when you play it, you don't get the buff, right? So you only get the buff when it comes back to you. At the start of your turn, boost 3 random units on the row by 1. So that's quite good. You're gaining 3 value per turn. That's pretty good. It's actually really good. And the problem is you're playing essentially a 7-point play, right, for tempo. That's really slow. And the other problem is that it can just be weathered. So if you play this on a row, they play weather, it removes the golden froth. It removes it, which is horrible. That means this is probably a bad card. If a 0 weather meta appears, I could see potentially people trying this out. In a swarm deck, you could see this being run, right? But other than a swarm deck, I think this is probably too weak. I don't think it's worth it. And even swarm decks probably have better options than this. It's too easy to remove the buffing, it's a bit too slow. If it does stick, it gets insane amounts of value, but I just don't see it. Also, it has some problems with things like Kairan could eat it. For example, 10 damage is quite a bit to do, but it's not an insane amount to do. So, could see it. There's also like the whole, DBLC can target it, you know. So if DBLC, or if this comes into the meta, people start running DBLC and picking up 6 points for free. I mean, for free, without having to set up anything. And that's exactly like old DBLC plus 5, you know, 13-point bronze. Pretty good. Not really, but still. That makes it really easy to kill. Interesting note, Philippa can't kill this. Mano can kill it, but probably not the greatest use of Mano. Thinking, Leo can kill it with Cantarella or the Guardian, and I think that's about the only popular removal currently. So it will stick on the board itself. The buff, however, maybe not. One thing that you can do is when they play Weather, you could also move this. So if you're playing this in Skellige, we'll get to the card, but you can then move it. Or if you're playing Movement Skoya, you can move this into a different row. Golden Weather's a problem, but if you clear Skies, as I am aware, I think the boon comes back. With how this is worded, if you clear Skies, then this will come back. We'll see, it has potential, maybe. It's a bit slow for my liking, but maybe. Sheet Roll of Vergen. Deploy consume a Death Wish unit from your deck, but without boosting, and trigger that Death Wish. Quite bad, but also good. So, it's extremely dependent on what Death Wish units you're running. If you're playing Earth Elementals in your deck, this is a 12-point play. Well, it does give you 1 thinning, but it's a 12-point silver with 1 thinning. It's bad. That's really bad. So what we actually need is to get, I think, at least 16 points of value, I think. 14 to 18 points of value is where we want to be for the silver. 14 is on the very low end, where it will only be run if there's no other silver slot. Though there's a lot of really good silvers in the game right now. So that would be pretty hard. If you compare it to Shadow, it's kind of a faster version of Shadow, but it's also not controlled, so if you're running more than one type of Death Wish, this is random. Oh, it doesn't actually say random. Does that mean you can choose this? I didn't notice this until now. But if you can choose with which Death Wish, this makes it a lot better. Because this way you can run it in a consume deck with Neckers, as well as other Death Wish triggers. So, before I thought you couldn't run this in a Necker deck, because, it just randomly it would hit Necker and then you lose one of your 3 Neckers, and it brings out your second Necker, and then, you only have Neckers for 2 rounds instead of 3, and it's just not good. You can't, consume the Neckers. But if this doesn't say consume a random Bronze Death Wish, it says consume a Bronze Death Wish. So if you can choose, that makes the card a lot better, because the consume trigger then becomes relevant. If you can't choose, consume trigger isn't relevant, you can't run it in the Necker deck, it's not good. If you can choose, that makes it a lot better, because you can just play 1 or 2 other Death Wishes, and you're playing a somewhat worse card, but you don't have to go all in on Death Wish. It's actually not that bad. If you can choose, it's actually really good. I think you could put in, just 1 Rot Fiend or something, keep it in your deck, and then just play Sheet Roll when they row stack really, really hard, and you're fine. Because Rot Fiend is the only Death Wish card I think you could actually play with this, though. If it is random and you're putting this into a Death Wish deck, I think you fill it with triple Rot Fiend, and then you play like triple Griffin, you play Shadow as well, and you play like Slizzard, and you either Shadow out a Rot Fiend, or you Sheet Roll a Rot Fiend and then play Slizzard on a Rot Fiend, and you just play your Griffins and decimate the row. If row stacking becomes like even more prevalent than it is now, I could see a potential in that type of deck. It's not going to necessarily be good enough, because a finisher is going to be needed, and monsters don't have that great of a finisher. Woodland got nerfed, so we'll have to figure out what to do for a finisher for monsters, especially for a Death Wish deck. Probably just going to end up being some kind of carryover, but other than that, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can pick, but if you can pick, this card I think actually is good because of the consume trigger, and because you can play it in a Necker deck, which means a Necker Death Wish combination deck will most likely come out. Because this is consume trigger, it lets you play Slizzard round 1 without having to play Ekimara on a non-Ekimara target, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm really excited about this. Venendal Elite. 1 power, choose a revealed card. If it's a unit, copy its power, then set that unit's power to 1. If it's a special card, boost self by 9. I mean, at worst, this is a 1 power card. Almost never happens. The one combo that we're looking at here that is potentially absolutely broken is using this on your Cantarella. Now, you reveal your Cantarella, say with Leo Bonhart, you deal 11 damage to something. Then you Venendal Elite. So your spy becomes 1 power play, this becomes an 11. You're essentially playing a 21 point bronze. That's really good. Like, the fact that you have a 1 point spy is very, very good. You can play your spy whenever, pretty much. Yeah, you're just going to gain card advantage. The problem with it, the card, so even if you, like, say you reveal the enemy's units, you set 8 power, say 8 powers, fairly common, set an 8 power to 1, right? So you're playing an 8 plus dealing 7 damage, so you're playing a 50. The problem is it doesn't come out as a 15, it comes out as an 8, literal 8. Most 8 powers cards, usually have an additional effect that increases. So it's a very slow card, and that's its problem. Unless you have some type of like massive tempo advantage already, this card is actually too slow to see play, I think. You might play one of them for your Cantarella, because that is an actual insane combo. But then we're also talking about, does this even fit into a reveal archetype? And will a reveal archetype even be good? This card is obviously, you could run 3 of them if you're running Kahir in your Morvran list, but then is a Morvran list with Kahir and 3 of these copies even better than current Mill Morvran, right? And is current Mill Morvran even a better choice than Spies? And the same questions will still remain after this patch as far as I'm aware, and I don't think it is. Alchemist also did get changed, so there's a chance that a half reveal deck would make the cut. Kind of the same thing with Skellige, where you just run good stuff NG, where you're running your Alchemist, your Foot Soldiers, your Venendal Elite, Morvran +3 Imperial Golem. But I don't think this card is as good as people are claiming it to be. The thing is, you can also not play your 1 strength card, and you just mulligan it away, and hope to never see it again. It's really good versus something like Speletel though. If they have any... I mean, they have to have protectors in hand. And you're gonna get a lot of value there. Because they can't mulligan away their win condition. So, technically, reveal with 3 of these as a counter to Speletel, but I'm not even sure if they beat Speletel. They probably do, just because 20-point swing and 40-point swing in a Brawn. Yeah, it's pretty big. Hefty Helga, I think this card is actually just trash. If you consider how many units get on the board, in a very long round, there could be 15 units, at which point this card becomes good. But then the problem is you're also almost kind of telegraphing that you have Hefty Helg if you reveal it, so you probably never reveal it, in which case you're losing maybe like 3 to 5 points of value, depending on how much they row stack and how much they don't. And if you're losing 5 points of value, it's a, what is that, 20 point silver? Less than that? Probably below 20 point silver. At best, then you're looking at the fact that this is only good in a very long round versus token decks. So say you're playing versus Speletel, this is worthless. It's really good if your opponents are Swarm NR, or if your opponent is monsters, Swarm monsters, it's not, and not Eredin, for example. And even then, this is maybe even like an 18 at best or so. Like hitting 10 units is probably generous on average. So I think it's kind of just a shitty silver. I don't think it's worth it. It is just more power, which is what Reveal kind of needs, but I don't think it's nearly enough power to really warrant it. It's just kind of not a great card. If Reveal ends up being played, I could actually see this being played, but I just don't think it's a good card. If Reveal becomes good, which I don't think it will, but if Reveal becomes good, this could make the cut, just because silver slots aren't that great, or they're much more synergistic in there, like even Jilla, that type of scenario. But I'm fairly sure it won't make the cut. I don't think it's good enough, unless a massive swarm meta occurs with Araha's Behemoths Consume type decks. I don't think we're seeing this card. It's really bad versus self-damage, which might become more prevalent, versus Cursed Archetype as well, because you give them additional points on their Berserker Marauders, if I remember correctly, or Berserkers. Anyways, moving on. Catapult, 6 power, highest and lowest damage the highest and lowest enemy in the opposite road by 1, and increase the damage dealt by 1. This is kind of a shitty bronze. Now, if this works like it should work, where if they have 1 unit, it applies both ticks. So, if they have a 6 on the row, say they play a you play a KSS, they play a KSS, you play this next to a KSS, and target their card, it should kill it. In that scenario, this is a great card, but only in that scenario, pretty much. This is very good on turn 1 or turn 2 when they haven't played minions, but as it develops, as the round develops, I think this card becomes worse and worse, because most often, the lowest enemy is usually capped at 1 or 2. So, even if you get Fresh Through twice, you're missing out a point of damage. At a maximum, this card is worth 14. And often enough, the 4 damage won't actually be hitting. It'll be hitting for 1 or 3. Like, you can avoid that by targeting a row with not 1s, but you're gonna hit a 3 instead of 4, you're gonna hit a 2 instead of a 3, etc, etc. I think this isn't nearly as good as Battering Ram, but if you're looking at maybe we'll see play, maybe it could see play, just because we'll see the card later. But now you start off every round. If you want to play a massive, like, full-on machine deck, you can start off every round with already having 1 crewman. And it means this one-shot 6 strength units that the opponent places on board, which is, that's relevant. It kills Impera Enforcers, it kills KSS. There's probably something else that I'm missing that it also kills, but yeah. Interesting note, this is actually really bad versus Marauders because it's 2 ticks of damage. It's not once for 6, it's twice for 3. So it ends up only doing 2 damage instead of 4 damage. If other cards similar to that get printed, then of course this becomes even worse. We'll see if this gets run just as actual removal, because it is 6 removal immediate. I don't think it's good enough though. So, next card, this is the card I was talking about. Whenever this unit is discarded to destroy, set its base power to 1 and resurrected on a random row. Crewman 1. So this means it carries over rounds. So it is actually 1 point carryover, which is infinitely better than 0 point carryover, funny as that is. I think this card has a lot of potential. The problem is it's a silver slot in NR, which means it's competing with tactics slots that you need for Natalis. And Natalis is kind of one of the few things that NR has going for it currently. The whole Natalis Commander's Horn, or Natalis into whatever, as really good plays. So, we're looking for a silver that's competing for only like 3 silver slots, because 3 of them are filled already. Maybe 2 if you're greedy. And then you're probably running Nenneke as well. You're probably running other cards as well. And it's getting harder and harder to find a slot for Ronvid to actually fill. But I think this card has a lot of potential. I think it will definitely be tried out. The fact that it's a crewman on board every single turn, the fact that it's 1 carryover, always guaranteed, which prevents dry passing if your opponent has no carryover, and monsters and Eska are the only ones that really do have carryover, so versus spies, versus NG in general, and versus Scoia'tael, if they're not playing War Dancers, they can't dry pass anymore, so that's great, or versus NR without Ronvid. Interestingly enough, this card is really bad versus Bloody Baron, but Bloody Baron doesn't see play. So, card is good, I'm just not sure if it's good enough to warrant a silver slot, currently. In the current metagame, in the current faction strength, or like the faction identity that NR has, not the identity, but the current way the faction is built, as far as NR goes, it might not fit in, because NR is already playing more crewman than machine. So we'll see. I think this is one of the more fun, exciting cards in the set, I think. Possibly not the best though. Hattori, resurrect a bronze or silver Scoia'tael unit with power less than or equal to this unit. So we're looking at a Sigurd Rifa with additional requirements, so it can only target Scoia'tael units, and it has to have power less than or equal to this unit. I think if we're going to see this play, if we're going to see this see play, it's generally going to be onto the Silver Dwarf with 2 strength. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on the name right now. I can't remember it. But it's a 2 strength Silver Dwarf that summons a dwarf from your deck, gives it 3 additional strength. I think that's what we see used on. I don't think we're going to see this get buffed to then bring a bigger unit back, because I don't think there are any good big Scoia'tael units. You can technically play Teruviel a second time if you buff this unit to 6. So that is pretty good. If you think about it, you play Hawker Smuggler once on this, and then you can replay Teruviel, and that's a 20 point silver if you're counting the buff as well. It's not bad. Situational requires you to run Hawker Smuggler and Teruviel in your deck. Moraine could be the same, but the reason Moraine works and Teruviel, I mean Teruviel was just decent. Another reason why Moraine works, however, and Teruviel work, is because people don't know if it's Teruviel or Moraine. If you play this, they're always going to know, so you can't play this with Moraine really. It becomes kind of a weak card then, because people can expect it. Also, you'd need to buff it to 7, which is much harder than 6 to fulfill. If this gets played, it's pretty much played only as a second Silver Dwarf activator. Pretty much. I don't think this gets like buffed to 8 and then replays Stennis or anything. It's too slow for that. I don't think, yeah, this isn't going to be like, oh yeah, replay replay your dwarves that have been strengthened with resilience and then killed off. Or you've consumed or something. No, I don't think so. I think this is going to target low strength units with muster effect, so either Agitator or the Silver Agitator. That was there before Agitator, so it's kind of like Agitator's the bronze, silver. Hey May Battle Maiden. To power damage a machine or soldier ally by 1 and play a copy of it from your deck. Absolutely disgusting of a card. Really, really disgusting. This is a better Reaver Scout. Now, it can't target every single ally unit, so you can't really target Freya, but it can target almost everything else in SK, and SK thrives on self-damage as well. So, where you would see this being played, I mean, this will probably see play in every single SK deck, but it can target X-Men, and X-Men have armor, so the 1 damage technically doesn't even matter, unless you're in weather or taking damage some other way. It targets everything in current restore Skellige other than Priestess of Freya, so Priestess of Freya is untargetable. But that means you can play 1 or 2 copies of these on Harpooner or Warmonger or Armorsmith. You can cut the Lacerate, you cut a Armorsmith, you play 2 copies of this card, and bam, better deck. It's an obvious synergy for self-damage, because you're damaging things. It's an obvious synergy for Cursed, because you're doing damage to something, and Cursed also thrives on that, so you've got your bears, skirmishers, no, not skirmishers, I can't remember names of cards, I'm sorry. The 6 that transforms into a 12 bear if it takes damage. So you can use it on that without losing any value off of this. It's a really strong play as well. So, because you're essentially playing 14 power and thinning. You can damage, and also in Curse you can just damage a random thing to bring out another thing, which will activate your Marauders or like give them more power. I think this card is absolutely disgusting. If they don't change a lot of values on SK cards, I think SK just becomes tier 1. I mean, not tier 1, becomes the best deck. Because I don't think Spies got any additional things, whereas SK actually did. Spies were stronger, but this is really good. This is really, really good. It also more consistently gets you to your restore. Interesting enough, restore won't hit Doregray, but now you just don't have to run Doregray anymore. Like, who cares? You've got other good cards. Gedineth Flaminica. You clear hazards. Hazards, as I said previously, are things like weather. There are probably going to be other negative effects, like Ragnarok, Drought are things, but additionally to that, it allows you to move 2 allies to it. So this is a very specific counter to, I think, movement square and, well, harpooners as well. Because you can actually clear weather and realign your, say, self-damage engines with Light Longship and Greatsword. I think the bigger impact is going to be that Light Longship actually triggers on deploy, but this is technically really good if you only care about that specific matchup, that movement square matchup. If you're using it as weather clear, it's kind of not that amazing because it is just an 8 power unit. It means you just get lacerated more. It's kind of good for anti-valuing harpooners though, because if say you have a row of 5 units, you play this into a different row, you grab 2 of them, and now you have 2 rows for 3, which means your plays are a bit better. Lacerate doesn't hurt you as much. So you can de-align lacerates as well. We'll see. The self-damage archetype that cares about the movement really doesn't care about weather. So it's kind of, you know, it's kind of interesting. We'll see though. I think it's a decent card. It's a card that you might see one of in your deck, but Armorsmith is better weather clear, so this is only really good for like self-damage, for movement, etc. Herald Hound Snout. So this is a really complicated card. I'll just quickly tell you what it does. 6 power unit. It spawns 2 1-strength tokens on each side of it, and a 1-strength token on the opposite side, so on your opponent's row. So your ally minions have tokens, have Death Wishes. The left one, I think, is +3 strength to a random ally. So strengthen a random ally by 3. The right one is damage all units on the opposite row by 1. That's exactly where you're spawning the other 1-strength copy of it. And then they get a... So the unit they get doesn't actually have death. It's a mechanic called Revenge, which is kind of like a limited death. So what revenge means is that if it dies on your opponent's turn. So when you play this card, they summon a unit on the opponent's board that has revenge. And since it's on the opponent's row, side of the board, I should say, that means that revenge means when you kill it, when it dies on your turn. So you can't combo this with weather. You cannot combo it with weather, it does not work. To my knowledge, as I've talked to some CDPR people, they have said this does not work with weather. So you can't play this with frost and have it trigger. Also, the thing that it does trigger is, I think, bring a random bronze cursed unit from your deck. So that trigger is actually good. That trigger is the best trigger of the three. So yeah, you get a random bronze unit in addition to these 2 tokens plus the 6 strength you have on your board. However, triggering it is going to be so hard. It means your opponent has to not have a way to kill it or consume it on their turn. It means you have to actually trigger it, so you have to... Well, you only have to kill your own token, the one that does 1 damage to everything, but what if they buff their unit, right? So you need them to not have a buff either. Currently in the meta, thankfully, not many buffs, but still, I think it's a bit inconsistent. It's really slow, because you are playing 7 points on board, which is really slow. I don't think this sees play. It is cursed as well. The unit itself is cursed and all the tokens are cursed, so there's a lot of cursed synergy here, and I could see play just because of that. It's a good play into weather, into frost, for example. You can play this and then on your turn, maybe Wilhelm triggers and then it triggers Wilmar as well. I don't think this sees play. I think it's not a good enough card. It's a bit too hefty a requirement to fulfill for not an insane amount of strength. In the best case scenario, it's about 12 strength plus a bronze unit from your deck, which is, admittedly, that's actually broken. However, that never happens, essentially, and it requires multiple turns of setup. It requires your opponent to not have any answer. And if this card becomes meta, as if it's good enough to play, people will have counters to it, which makes it worse. So, if we see this card actually seeing success early on in the first few couple of weeks of the meta, people will adjust and will start playing around this card, keeping buffs or playing buffs even. In which case, it's never happening. This card is never seeing play. Yeah, what's your guys' thoughts on this? Those were mine, and hope I'll see you guys in the next video, and enjoy the patch.